All right, we want to call our meeting to order. I want to welcome you all to our February meeting and ask Mr. Williams if he'd open us in prayer and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Can I ask, Father God, we're so grateful and thankful for this day, thankful for just the opportunity that we have today for the board members to ask your spirit and just your knowledge and wisdom and guide them in their decision making and the votes and things that they do today. Father God, we ask you to just safe travel those who are en route to the meeting. As you continue to be blessed by decisions and actions, and we represent you tonight in all that we do. In your name, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. We'll open with our consent items, which consist of the agenda, minutes of the January 14th, 2020 meeting, overnight field trip, FCCLA, Executive Council meeting in Covington, Georgia, February 6th through 8th, 2020, an overnight field trip, HOSA, State Leadership Conference, Atlanta, Georgia, March 4th through 7th, 2020, and an overnight field trip, Skills USA State Competition, Atlanta, Georgia, March 12th through 13th, 2020.
A motion that we accept the minutes from the previous agenda, the agenda
Consent items.
and the consent items.
All right. We have a motion to accept the consent items. Have a second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Don't have any public participation. That's fine.
What's our teachers want to talk?
No, sir.
Then we'll start with our financials with Ms. Buffer.
All right, the first one we have is our general fund. You can see our taxes are still going up. We got a good bit this month also. So we are up to 82%, almost 83% of our tax collections that we budgeted for the year. Our budget, we're at 58.33% of our fiscal year, and we have 68.75% of our revenues. So as you can see, most of those are taxes and then the impact aid that we will be amending the budget for but have not done yet. So we're in good shape on our revenues. On our expenditure side, we've got 56.72% expended, which means we are under budget on the expenditures at this point in the year. So our expenditures are also looking well. A few categories, as I'll remind you, are a little bit over, but those are because we have to pay certain things once a year, so they always look a little bit out of whack till the end of the year. But everything looks in line with where it should be this time of year. On our balance sheet, we have about $4 million in cash in the bank, and our fund equity is at $3.1 million. So we are in good shape. Remember last month there was about $2.9 million. So it is still going up right now with the tax collections, and will start to go down as we start using that and the collections not be coming in. But we are looking good right now with our $3.1 million in the fund equity. On our SPLOST collections, we have $57,119.34. That is slightly higher than January of last year, but a little bit lower than our December. But still within our above our budget of $50,000 per month. So the SPLOST collections are holding, that they are staying above that level. So that looks good. And on our summary, I told the board last month we already had our our payment for that's due April 1st. So we're now moving toward the next payments for next year. So we've got a balance of $471,907 in the SPLOST fund, and $1,605,572 in the bond fund, giving us that $1.478 million towards the payments that are coming due. The April payment being $1.136 million. So we have that covered and are collecting towards the next payments.
Ms. Buffer, on the
Yes, sir.
SPLOST, or the actual tax collections, I see this current year is right at $400,000. with the millage that we have that set at, what are we really expecting to get on that?
On the,
You know?
on the splosh?
No, on the tax collections aspect, from the bond ad valorem.
The
I'm
bond
sorry,
tax.
that, it's at so the current year was
634, right, right.
Okay.
I have to go back to the budget and look, I'm not positive, I can check on that and let you know.
I was just wondering if it was in the 82%
What
like the
percentage
other,
like
or is
that?
that?
Okay, I can check on that and let you know. On the capital projects, no change there, other than a little bit of interest. We are still holding that for emergency purposes. Nothing's been allocated for any specific projects at this time. We also have the quarterly reports from the principals through the end of December. First one up is the elementary school. Started with $53,327.53. Receipts of $23,429.39. Disbursements $33,986.83 for a balance of $42,770.09 at the end of December. On the middle school, you can see that beginning balance $54,631.72. Collections $38,829.05. Disbursements $21,702.76 for a balance of $71,758.01. You can see the different categories that they have collected in. The next one is the high school activity summary. Started with $68,313.50, ended with $53,322.18. On the various clubs that we have. And on the high school athletics, I started with $38,714.99, ended with $14,018.33. That was a little hard to read. The font's kind of odd.
Any questions on any of the financials from Ms. Buffett? Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Next, we have board chair training.
As I believe everyone remembers, back in January, Ms. Barksdale was elected as the vice chair. Congratulations again. That comes with a great responsibility to have the opportunity to substitute for the chairperson in time of absence. So with this in mind, we try to have the vice chairperson trained to be able to take over the meeting. And Georgia School Board Association does a board chair training. They do two, one down in Tifton, Georgia, and one in Macon. Obviously, Macon is closer, so we would recommend that we attend the one in Macon on March 12th. And the chairman in the past has gone with us. If his vocation will allow, he'll join us, I hope. And I will go down with you, and we will go through that if that's okay for the one in March.
Yes, sir.
And this one we can do, just drive over that morning and drive back.
Right, we'll have to stay all night because it's not all the way down to Tifton.
Okay. And can I have a recommendation, or a motion to
I'll make a
accept the
motion.
recommendation? Right, we have a motion by Mr. Madison, second by Mr. Heighton. All in favor?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next on the agenda is the Convection steamer and kettle.
Over at the elementary school, we have two items that are connected by a boiler. We have a steamer that cooks food for us or steams food for us, and we also have a kettle that cooks via steam. Both of those items, back when they were put in, were connected to one heat source. And back in 1991, when the kettle was put in and the steamer was there before that, the two items connected were fine, and that was the way they did it. And over time, they have decided that that's not a good idea, because when one of them goes down, they're both down, and it greatly reduces the capabilities of preparing for food. Now, the other problem with these two items is they are old, they are used every day, and they have worn out, and we have been continuing to try and use, as Pat says, shoe leather and duct tape to try and keep them together. So we need to replace these two items. I was waiting on the impact aid money. We've received the impact aid money. We got 3 bids for a 40-gallon 2/3 jacket kettle. You can see the one for Manning, Don Edwards, and mobile fixture. And then the steamer 10-pan capacity for Manning, Don Edwards, and mobile fixture. Mobile fixture is the cheapest of the 3, and I recommend that we purchase both of these items. They are standalone items, so if one goes down, the other one is not incapacitated, and it makes that a more functional kitchen, but on top of that, it's also cheaper. So I would recommend that we purchase both of those.
Now, does this include the installation?
Yes, sir. Well, up to delivery and setting it there, and then Pat connects the electricity, but yes.
Okay. Any questions on these steamers and kettles?
Is that a good company, mobile fixture, y'all familiar with it?
Actually, we hadn't used them when we got the bid from Manning. We started talking to a gentleman on the phone through Don Edwards, and he deals with 2 or 3 different companies as a broker. So we put him on a group call, and he recommended that we order out of Atlanta and we could get a better price, because we were trying to get the price down. They're all the same item, they're all the same part numbers. It's just mobile fixtures out of Atlanta and buys a whole lot more of them than Manning does. So that's why they're cheaper.
Kids got to eat.
I'll make a motion we purchase.
We have a motion by Mr. Madison to accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Second.
And a second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous. Next up is our policy for revision, GBD personnel hiring.
On page 2 is the only change to this policy. As you remember, Ms. Bufford, was it 4 years ago or 3 that we changed that the board would pay for fingerprinting? But whatever year that was,
7 years ago.
that's the only change here is the fees. It used to be that the applicant had to pay for the fees for fingerprinting, and now the district pays for that. Other than that, this policy would remain the same. So that is the change. Next one down is board member legal status. That will be in review and remain the same. Special use of school buses, EDDA, will remain the same and in review. GBL, which is tenure policy, will remain the same in review. And IHAB is the report cards policy and will remain the same and stay in review.
Any questions on any of the policies? All right, we have superintendent's reports.
We'll start with the district legislative, delegate, and alternative. Every year in, well, last year we did it in March, so it'd be a fib to say we did it every year in February. I tried to move it back so we had more time. So we're doing it in February, trying to elect a delegate. The delegate goes to Savannah for the delegate assembly, and the delegate votes for our board. Doesn't vote maybe their personal belief, but votes for our board. Now, when we receive the delegate positions from GSBA, which will come in late March, possibly early April, we'll review those, we'll discuss them as a board, and then we'll direct the delegate that we elect how we want them to vote when they go to Savannah. Now, last year, I believe Ms. D went down, and it was a joy when she came back because everybody got a prize. So I'm not sure who's going to get elected this time, but we want to thank Ms. D for serving as that delegate last year. Thank you very much.
I know Ms. Freeman's gone before, and I went 2 years ago. I think it's a good opportunity for board members to see how it's done with others. If one of you two could do it.
When is it?
It's in June.
The first week in June. I want to say it's June 6 or 7, somewhere in that range.
We need to know exactly now.
I can get that for you, but I know it's the first week of June.
Okay. We can let you know at the next meeting.
It'll be a Thursday. Well, we need, like I said, if we go ahead and set it, then it's, because getting hotels and stuff gets
It's
rough
six.
the farther you get to it. June 5th and 6th.
There you go,
it is
5th and
right there.
6th.
Thank you.
That should be a Friday and a Saturday. So,
I'll get the hotel if we have a name.
so what do y'all think you can do?
Yeah, I can look at my schedule, try to check it soon.
I'll check too. I'll let you know.
Can we let you know?
Can we do- I mean,
Yeah, just
next
call me
couple
or
days.
email me tomorrow or the next day, and then I'll get your hotel.
I know
Okay.
June 20th, I'm gonna be gone, but
And we can appoint officially next month too. So,
Okay.
once you check it out.
All right, thank you. I wanted to recognize, we had 2 students that participated in the 2020 Biannual Southeastern High School Artist Competition. Now, our wonderful newspaper did run these items, and the student that won this, or won for this item, is Beatrice Jackson, and she named this drawing called Dreaming of Blue. And she got an award for this one. And then this item, I don't want to hold it up wrong because she told me not to, Jada Mays, and she calls this Sky. And she also was an award winner. Now, we identify all types of things from our Skills USA and our athletes. I did not want to leave the artist out, so I have taken care of the artist.
I really did.
I'm hoping that everybody's paying attention to the governor. The governor is throwing out items and numbers like Ms. Bufford and I sit and read those and go, how are we going to pay for that? But he's looking at $2,000 for teachers again for next year. And then we've heard numbers somewhere between 3 and 5% increase depending on where they fall in the salary schedule. Now, none of that's etched in stone, but I like to keep the board abreast of what legislation is doing. So we'll see what happens with that as they argue about cuts in other areas. So just something to think about. February 6th, we received a notification again from Cognia. Now, Cognia, as you remember, is the replacement or the overtaking of Advanced Ed. They do our accreditation for us, for our district and all of our schools. Last year, we received a letter from them and allowed us to move our accreditation date back 1 year. This year, we have received an email that says that we can move it back as far as 4 years, back to 23-24. Now, the catch with moving it back to 23-24 or even 22-23 is there'll be new standards in place. Now, I presented all of this to the principals as we sat around the table and discussed things and asked them what they thought. And as we discussed it, we started bouncing ideas off of each other that as we get a new principal, if the board approves them tonight, then that new principal probably shouldn't go through accreditation the first year they're here. That wouldn't be very fair to them nor successful. And if you push it back to 21-22, then you're setting on new standards and old standards. So we also recommended that we push it back to 23-24 for new standards. Now, I did talk to the person that sent the email today, who was vice president in Cognia, and she assured me that there would not be any punishment or any reduction in our accreditation if we push it back. They're offering this to everybody in the U.S., and they're doing this to get new standards in place. But they can't just stop new standards today and start them tomorrow. Number one, they're not ready, and number two, districts would be caught in between. So that's why they do this, to push it out that far, and we have to make a decision by March 1. So I wanted to explain to the board where we were at. That is our recommendation, to move it back to 23-24 using the new standards.
When was our last review?
Our last review was 2015. So 2020 would have made perfect sense. Right. And then they moved us back a year, and now they're looking at 4 more.
Okay, so is that something that we would vote on too in March, or is that?
Well, it has to be decided by March 1. I just want you guys to know what's going on and where we're at, and we'll make that recommendation to them and move forward unless the board has a question, and then we could discuss it tonight.
Anyone have any questions on that?
I mean, I really don't know exactly what it is, but I don't like waiting till the last minute. I mean, that's not what we're doing, right?
No, sir, not at all. Usually, the accreditation is every 5 years. What's happened is there's two, now the second company has taken over the accreditation for the state. It used to be Southern Association of Colleges and Schools a long time ago. You may have heard SACS before. Well, SACS was taken over by Advanced Ed, which is also owned by Measured Progress. Now we have Cognia. So I'm not gonna tell you it's not gonna change again. I don't know that, but Southern Association of Colleges and Schools was in place for many, many, many years. And then all of a sudden it was taken over. So we'll be just fine with our accreditation. And the secret with accreditation is if you didn't have accreditation, then the diplomas that you issue to children are not worth the paper it's written on. So you have to have that accreditation. So when a student tries to go to college, you go to an unaccredited high school, then you might as well have stayed home and done something with mom and dad because it's not worth anything. So we're not going to lose that. That's not going to be an issue. We're still in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That's all I have.
All right, need a motion to go to executive session?
A motion to go to executive session.
Second by Mr. All right, call our meeting back to order. The superintendent has given us a list of recommended administrative positions. I make a motion that we accept the list as presented.
A second motion.
I have a second for the administrative positions. All in favor? Unanimous? Superintendent has given us a list of recommendations for contracts for the Lincoln County Elementary School. I make a motion to accept the list as presented. We have a second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous? Superintendent has given us a list of recommendations for contracts for the Lincoln County Middle School. I make a motion that we accept the list as presented. Have a second by Mr. Heitman. All in favor?
I'm gonna abstain from Janice Madison, but I'll vote for the rest of them.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent has given us a list of recommendations for contracts for the Lincoln County High School. I make a motion that we accept this list as presented. All in favor? Or need a second?
Second.
Second. Ms. Barksdale, all in favor? Unanimous? Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we accept the retirement of Mr. Henry Madden, effective 6/30/2020.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hyman. All in favor? Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we accept the retirement of Ms. Evelyn Beggs, effective the end of the 2019-2020 school year. Have a second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we accept the retirement of Mr. Jasper Dukes, effective the end of the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Superintendent is recommended, I make a motion that we accept the resignation of Ms. Daisha Bussey, effective January 27th, 2020. Second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. The superintendent is recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Mr. Roger Zellers as custodian at the elementary school. Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent is recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Ms. Cynthia K. Wells as the 7th grade ELA teacher for the 2020-2021 school year. Second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. The superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we transfer Mr. Roy Johnson to the middle school special education position. Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Mr. Daniel Tangersley as the assistant principal for the middle school. Second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we transfer Ms. Whitley Tankersley to the 8th grade math position. Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. The superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Harrison Spurlock as PE instructor for the Lincoln County High School. Second by Mr. Heitman. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Miss Molly Spurlock for social studies teacher at Lincoln County High School. Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Ms. Katie Hayslip as the elementary math teacher. Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. The superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Ms. Amy Wingate as elementary gifted teacher. Second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent is recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Dr. Chris Wolski as the high school principal for the 2020-2021 school year. We have a second by Mr. Madison. All in favor? Unanimous. I make a motion to increase the superintendent's annual salary by $3,000 effective February 1st, 2020. I have a second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Hyden, second by Ms. Barksdale. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.